Good afternoon and welcome to session 37 out of 47. Snap. There's a lot of sessions in this conference, but they have all been amazing, powerful, eye-opening. It has just been an excellent experience here for Dare to Be Great 2021. So welcome everyone to this next session. And I have with me here Ann Camara, who's the Assistant Director with Cambridge Emergency Communications, as well as Liz Belmonte, who is the Training Supervisor there. And they're going to be doing a session called How to Ignite Your Flame. Why do we go from Best Dispatcher to Most Disgruntled? And what we can do about it. Take it away, ladies. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Welcome, everyone. Pleasure to be here today. I can't believe there's like 1,100 people in this attending today. So I'm a little nervous, but we'll get there. So as Ricardo said, Liz and I work at Cambridge Emergency Communications in Cambridge, Mass. And a little bit about myself. My name is Ann. I've been in 911 since 2006, so 15 years now. I started out as a police dispatcher, then became a CTO, head dispatcher, and then I was at that agency for about 8 years. And then I got an opportunity to actually civilianize a dispatch center at a smaller agency. I went there in 2014, stayed there till 2016 when I came to Cambridge as the Assistant Director of Training and Administration. And now recently I've just been reassigned to operations. So it's been a long journey, but I think I've run through the gamut of being a dispatcher, being a fire dispatcher, police dispatcher, 911 call taker, being the disgruntled one, and then reigniting my flame and working from there.
My turn. I'm Liz. I've been here at Cambridge Emergency Communications for 18 years. Started off as a dispatcher, became a trainer, and later the union steward. About 4 years ago, I was promoted to training supervisor. I've been in that role ever since. I love it. Training's my jam, as they say. And Ann and I put together a dispatch academy here in Cambridge, which has been really successful. And we got a lot of our ideas from, attending conferences like this one. So, hopefully we can continue the conversation and spark new ideas for everybody in our industry.
So I wanted to start the presentation thinking back to the beginning. When I think back to 2006, when I started with that first agency, I remember how large my flame was, how big that flame inside of me was. I went to a state dispatch academy and without ever actually setting foot in the dispatch center. So I had no idea what CAD was or what kind of radio we were using or what kind of dispatch protocols we had. I knew nothing. I was as green as they come. And I went to this state academy, and I was actually the first hire from that agency to attend that state academy. And when I came back, I remember one of the lieutenants who's in charge of dispatch said to me, "Oh, you've been to the academy, you're ready to go. Here's your mic, here's your station, good luck." And I remember just the excitement of being on the floor for the first time, the excitement of actually having 911 ring for the first time, and also how scary that was. Because now I knew that 911 was going to ring and I was it. It was exciting, it was scary, but at the same time, I knew I was fulfilling what I wanted to do. I was taking that step towards the career that I wanted to pursue. I was talking to Liz yesterday as we were planning for this session today, and I said, I remember my first 911 call. And it's tough sometimes, like we take so many calls over the years, and it wasn't even like a big deal of a call. It was a well-being check. It was an older lady asking for a well-being check on a friend who was also elderly. And I remember I took all the information, I wrote everything down. My partner gave it out to the officers. The officers came back and said, well, this is a sudden, so we're going to have to call this person back and advise her that, her friend has passed away. And I remember like looking at my partner and being like, well, do I need to make this call? And she's like, yeah, you have to call her back. She's not the next of kin. The police department's going to go notify the next of kin, but you have to call the BRP back because she asked for a call back. And I'm like, okay. So like, it wasn't a big deal of a call, but it was like the first one. So I think it just stuck with me throughout these years. And I still remember the excitement. I still remember how scared I was. And I still remember how much I felt for that lady, telling her that her friend was no longer with us.
Yeah, one of the things, I don't remember my first call, that's for sure. But I do remember an early call that stood out for me. And, my experience here in Cambridge was, a lot of that old school mentality where, you would get teased and they were kind of like almost looking to see your reaction to certain calls and things like that. But one of the first calls that impacted me early on was for a single mom who had just gotten kicked out of her friend's home after she went there after experiencing domestic violence in her own home. And she got kicked out and she was at one of the train stations and she needed a place to go with her two babies. And that really impacted me because, I had been a single mom for many years and I had experienced some rough times. So there was no shelter at that time of night for her to be able to take her children. She had a newborn and she had a 2-year-old. And I remember staying on the line for her for a while and trying to get her the resources for her and her children that night, and really it having such a big impact on me. And probably during those first 6 months, I kept on thinking, is this a job for me? Because a lot of my coworkers always said you shouldn't let it impact you. This is part of the job. And so I started questioning whether this was the right fit for me because what I experienced with that call, really I had to step outside, take a break. I called my husband. I said, I wanted to go and help this woman.
And I think one thing that we rarely think about when we're talking about the flame, or we're talking about how excited we get or how scared we get each time 911 rings, is that sometimes we forget that not only do we have a psychological reaction to 911 calls, but we also have a physiological reaction. We have a physical reaction each time that phone rings or each time that radio clicks. So one thing that I want everybody to keep in mind today as we're going through the slides and as we're thinking about this is that none of this is going to be to shame anybody or to talk about, what you are doing wrong. Instead I want to build on it. I want us to build on ourselves, and I want us to think about the positive side of our jobs and try to build on that instead of going through and building on the negative, which is what we see a lot. Thinking back to the beginning of things, what do we want when we take a job like this, right? You want to help others. You want to give back to the community. This was true for me. I grew up in the town where that agency is. I wanted to give back to that community because that community welcomed me when I moved to the United States. So I wanted to feel part of something meaningful. After, my family moved, and I didn't talk about this earlier, but my family moved here when I was 13 from Brazil. And, it was a large phase of adaptation for myself and my siblings, but also, feeling not as part of something anymore and feeling like I had to rebuild that community. So after, going through the public schools in that town and going to college and being out and coming back and living in that town again, I wanted to be part of something meaningful. I wanted to be part of that town, and I felt like I was part of that town. And finally, I think we all, when we started 911, not always that's the career path that we want, but sometimes it's the career path that we choose. It definitely was not the career path that I thought I was going to be in. I wanted to be a police officer when I came back to Framingham, and I wanted to, be at that agency, and I wanted to work for that agency. I wanted to be a police officer and again, continue to give back to the community and help people. But I ended up falling in love with 911, if that is even a thing. I wanted to make 911 a career, and I wanted to grow in it. It's not that I didn't want to take calls for the rest of my life, but I also wanted to give back to the 911 community and do more for the 911 community and grow within the 911 community.
Yeah, I mean, my story's not as pretty as that. I pretty much just fell into the job. I was a bartender going to school, getting my degree in Spanish education, thought I was going to be a Spanish teacher, and while bartending, got my first part-time job at the school, hated it, and said, I got to look for a different path. Typed up, did a search for a bilingual person, and the city of Cambridge was holding a big test for 911 dispatchers. Didn't know anything about being a 911 dispatcher, but said, what the heck, I know the city of Cambridge, I'm bilingual, let's see where this goes. And I didn't get hired right away. It took about a year and a half, and I was still at the school, still not loving it, and decided that I was going to take a chance. And that was 18 years ago, and have made this into my career. And it's what I'm going to retire as my career. So I think I made the right decision.
And then we start and we go on the floor and we take our calls and we meet our coworkers and we find our type A's. Which, if you go into any 911 center, you'll find the type A personalities, the people who are taking charge, who are in control, who want to be in control, who are very determined, very structured, who want to do things the way they're supposed to be done. And nothing wrong with the type A's, but sometimes it can cause conflict as well, because you get all these type A's inside one room, and, sometimes they're not all going to agree, and they're all going to want to take charge. But one thing that, Liz and I were talking about yesterday is that when you have those incidents where the help is needed, those type A's will do what is needed to be done. I think your words yesterday, Liz, were, they will each take charge of one thing and make sure that it gets done. So I think a lot of times we see type A personalities as being, sometimes used in a derogatory way towards people in public safety. But for us, and I think in 911, it is an asset. It is an asset to be a type A personality, to be able to take control and to take advantage of this personality type.
Yeah, I mean, I think in my experience, I've never seen anybody work so well as when there's a major incident, and we all work so well as a team. Those type A personalities really come well together. Probably the best example that most people might be familiar with is the Boston Marathon bombing. Cambridge was heavily involved in that incident, and the night that the car was carjacked in our city exemplifies, that teamwork and those type A personalities really coming together to, to try to help not only our city and our police department, but our neighboring city, Watertown, where they were also affected. So that's a great example of those type A personalities really coming together and being successful.
And I think that part of being this type A personality and, part of being this controlled, structured, on the ball personality, it also comes with keeping everything close to the headset, right? Or police officers say we keep it close to the vest. I guess in 911 we keep it close to the headset. And this is something that, I didn't realize that we did so much until I became involved in peer support. And I think, Liz's experience has been the same. In talking to some of the dispatchers that were working during the Boston Marathon and during Sean Collier's murder, and talking to them about those experiences, and hearing them describe what happened afterwards and how proud they were of the work that they had done, but at the same time having to maybe be debriefed by a police officer or being debriefed by a firefighter, and not really having that peer-to-peer experience that others were having after the fact. I think that has really touched me in a way, and I think that is part of keeping that flame alive and keeping that flame ignited, is to really have that peer-to-peer support system that is much needed in every 911 center, because I feel like we handle a lot.
No, agreed. Definitely, there have been great strides in the past 10 years, I would say. That one definitely resonates. I was working the following morning after the city of Boston got put on, emergency shutdown, and just coming into work not knowing what to expect. Your adrenaline is through the roof. And it's just kind of nice that everybody was kind of in that supportive, ready to help each other, mindset, and we got through it. And it made me realize how important it was to have those peer support resources available to our industry.
So if we talk about the environment that we are in, and this is just the physical environment, right? And, we're doing the shift work. Here in Cambridge, they have this crazy schedule, and they work 2-day shifts, 2 3 to 11s, 2 midnights, and they go on days off. Again, it works for them here. People like it. I've never worked that schedule. I was always on a set schedule. I've done midnights. I've done 3 to 11s. I've done day shifts. I just never had to rotate through them. Liz seemed to like it when she was on it. So I think that, we have to take that into consideration when we are doing this self-reflection, is also I need to care and to be mindful about what type of shift I'm working and what things I'm doing when I'm not on shift, right? In this type of work, we don't have control. So we have zero control over what's coming our way, right? And now 911 rings, it's lock of the draw. We have no idea what's coming. We also don't have a lot of control over the policies and procedures that are coming our way, because we're serving other departments. So we are a servant department, and we don't work under the police department, or we don't work under the fire department, at least not here in Cambridge. But we are serving them. So if they make a change to their policies and procedures, it could affect us, and it could be something that we have zero control over. We are in constant change. Just 911 in the last 15 years alone has changed so much, from the legacy 911 system to the E911 system to now in NG 911 system. It's just so much change. It's evolution. I mean, we're evolving. 911 is evolving, and it's continuously evolving. The constant fight, flight, or freeze response that our bodies are in. Think about the adrenaline that runs through your body each time that 911 phone rings, or each time one of your officers clicks their radio. Yes, we're used to it. Yes, we do it every day. But I was talking to one of our dispatchers who's been here for 20 years the other day, and he said, sometimes when I hear that, my son is choking, or I'm having trouble breathing, or something like that, the adrenaline still pumps in. It still comes through my body. And putting your body through this fight, flight, or freeze response each and every day will create issues if you don't find a way to put it back out, or to put your body back into a normal, constant rhythm. Also thinking about the environment that we're in when we're on duty versus our lives when we're off duty. Are you leaving work at work? Are you able to leave work at work? Are you able to leave your family life when you come to work? I hear people talk about this all the time. Oh, this is work. You need to leave your personal life outside the door when you walk into the center. But how do you really leave when you have maybe a child that's sick at home or a parent that's sick at home? So understanding that people are people, right? Our dispatchers are people, and you are a person. You cannot leave your life outside the door, and you cannot leave the things that you see in the comm center in the comm center. There's a mash. There is at some point the lines become blurry, and you will end up mixing those two up. And sometimes it's not a bad thing. Sometimes it's just the venting that you need to do before you get home, or the 20 minutes in the car by yourself. But you have to find a way to understand this environment and the differences between being on duty and off duty, and what that can create in your body. We talk about isolation and hypervigilance and hypersensitivity and being overinvested in the work. I remember when I first started on the job, I wasn't very interested in having normal people friends anymore, because one, they didn't find my jokes funny. Two, they did not understand what I did. Three, they wanted to know specific details that I was not allowed to tell. And four, I had this whole new world of friends who actually spoke my same language, right? Who actually understood all these things that I was going through. So, that's where the social isolation sometimes comes into play, is that, okay, well, I work this shift work. My friends have normal work schedules, normal 9 to 5 schedules. They don't want to hang out with me at 3 o'clock on a Tuesday afternoon. And the people that I can hang out with are actually people who do the same job, who are actually working the same schedule that I am. And when we hang out together, we're talking about work. So that's where people become overinvested, and that's where the hypervigilance begins. I was telling Liz, and I were talking yesterday, and I was telling Liz how I became this super hypersensitive about play dates when my kids were little. That I would not allow them to go on play dates because I didn't trust anybody. I did not trust that they were going to take care of my children. Whenever they got invited for a play date, it was also a play date with me. I would go and I would sit there, and sometimes the parents were like, well, if you want to go and run some, and I'm like, no, I'm fine. I'll just sit here and watch the kids. But that's all inherent from me, one, isolating myself from my actual normal social group, and being hypervigilant about everything and everyone. I was overinvested. I was definitely going down that path of unhealthy investment at work.
I think also we do talk about these things during the hiring process, because I think it's important to make sure that people understand, what they're getting into, the scheduling, the type of job, the type of calls that they're going to be getting, how it could affect them. And of course, as a new hire, you're saying, oh, sure, no problem, everything's great, that's not a problem. And then once, reality sets in and you're working that 16-hour shift because you might have gotten forced, and you have this crazy schedule, and, if you might have to juggle a family life, your work life, and it becomes a little bit difficult, and that's when really the negativity starts setting in. We have talked about what can we do, to increase morale and to try to get, people out of that funk. And, we talked about doing more wellness activities for the dispatchers. But here's the thing, I've done this for 18 years. And when Anne says on duty versus off duty, I was one of those people that said, oh, I don't bring my work home. Like, I forget about everything that happened today. Once I leave that building, I'm done. And that was my train of thought for many years. And I have a 23-year-old daughter who, maybe 5 years ago, we started talking about this, and she said, no, you never left work at home. Maybe you never talked about what happened at work, but you were constantly irate, in a bad mood, and all I could think about was that something happened at work to make you act like that because nothing was happening at home. So where we might think that we are able to leave work at work, that's not always the case. And, it took her many years to finally say that to me, or to be comfortable enough to say that to me, so that I put the brakes on and kind of opened my eyes and said, okay, I need to understand and recognize that maybe what's happening at work is affecting my mental health, and I need to see what I can do about making it better.
So other things that we find that also like influence our morale, our own internal feelings about this job, and kind of start beginning to put out that fire we have inside, is feeling undervalued, right? I worked for a couple of agencies that just saw us as just the dispatcher, right? I think we've all been there. We've heard that. And that feeling of like, oh, I want to help and I want to feel so much more. I want to feel like I'm doing so much more. And then getting that reaction from your peers at the police department or at the fire department, or even from your social group outside of public safety that says, you're just a dispatcher. That is painful. That starts to eat away at that flame. You find that sometimes, not always, some centers are plagued with the toxic personalities. And sometimes you're part of the problem. I think at times I was part of the problem. At times I was that toxic personality, but I didn't understand what was happening inside of me until a lot later. You find that there's a lot of micromanagement. And I find that, there's feedback. There's feedback that's lacking both from management to staff, and from the staff to management as well. And finally, I think we see that like people become the most down on themselves and the most negative when they find that they have zero opportunity for growth and that they want to grow.
Yeah, and that's something that we're hoping to be more proactive about. So we started talking about feedback here in Cambridge, and just kind of having a conversation with the dispatchers, because, the reality is they're the best resource for managers, for leaders. They're the best resource. And so I started asking them, why is it that, you guys don't like it when we give you feedback, or, when we try to just talk about a call and how that went. And many of them said, because it's always negative. Anytime we're going to get feedback, we know it's always going to be a negative feedback, never a positive feedback. And I said, well, we give you kind of, we say kudos when you do something well. And they said, well, it's in a different environment when it's negative. We want it to be the same environment, positive and negative. We want you to give it the same amount of attention when it's negative as when it's positive. And I get that, and they are 100% right. So I think that's something that we need to work on, and we need to get better at, making it an environment where feedback is welcome, where feedback is another tool that we use. And as far as no opportunity for growth, that's huge. To be working somewhere for 18 years and, to continue to develop yourself, you want to look for growth. You want to look for opportunities. So we're hoping to start a program where we are developing our dispatchers if they do want to make this into a career and continue to grow, whether it be with our department or with our industry. And I think that once you do that, you're going to start motivating your employees, and they're going to perform better, and you're just going to get more out of them.
And I remember hitting that wall a couple of times in both my previous agencies. Was like, I have hit that wall. There's nowhere else where I can go. One, I wasn't getting any feedback. There wasn't any feedback, either positive or negative or anything. And secondly, it was just, there was no more opportunity to grow. I had to look outside of my agency in order to grow. And that wasn't just growth in terms of like getting myself certifications or degrees or anything like that. It was more of internal personal growth as well. So also knowing that it is part of the agency has a job to help you grow, but you also have a job to yourself, and you owe it to yourself to grow yourself. Because if the agency is not doing it, you have to find a way to do it for yourself. And honestly, sometimes it's the stop feeling sorry for yourself and go do something about it. And sometimes we do need that kick in the butt to say, yep, nope, this is my thing. I need to focus, and it's my future. It's my growth. So a lot of the things that we have seen with the physical impact of the job is, stress and weight gain and migraines and insomnia and body aches and lack of energy. Very, very physical reactions to our daily lives, right? We see this every day. I think my family can say that out of these 6, I check every box. And I've checked every box at some point in my career. But it's how you deal with the things that you are presented with that will help you overcome this physical impact. It's actually the way that you handle the stress, or the way you handle the way you eat, or, things that you can do to prevent the migraines or to prevent the insomnia from hitting, or, doing a little bit of exercise to help with the body aches or with the lack of energy. All these things have to begin with you.
And I think that as a supervisor, as a leader, I think it's important to just recognize when someone has had a tough call and letting them know, hey, that was a tough call. Why don't you take a break, go get some fresh air? Because once they see that you're recognized that as a tough call, they can start taking care of themselves as well. It becomes acceptable. And if we could get our supervisors to be on board and kind of be vigilant about these things, I think we'll start changing the mentality, and people will do a better job of taking care of themselves.
And I think most importantly, it's recognizing that the job is going to have a physical impact, because it's not a physical job. So if you think about it, if somebody works construction, they know that job is going to have a physical impact on them. We work in a comm center, in a controlled room. We are sitting down or standing up, but still our job is going to have a physical impact. And it's recognizing this impact and moving and making sure that you are mitigating this impact. There is a psychological impact, right? We know there is. It's been proven. We've shown through studies that there is a psychological impact. We've seen through, the PTSD studies that Dr. Lilly did. We've seen the depression and the anxiety. And then Jeremy DeMar, Liz, myself, and Adam Tim, we decided, well, why don't we check and see how much our families are seeing that we're changing? What kind of impact are our families noticing with us? And what we have seen from our study, and what we did was we surveyed over 500 families of dispatchers. So we didn't survey the dispatchers themselves. We wanted to survey the families. We wanted to know how much of an impact were the families noticing in their loved ones, right? So what we saw was that overall, family perceived dispatcher mood changes tended to increase with the increase in the dispatcher's length of time on the job. So the more time on the job, the more changes that the family was seeing in that dispatcher's mood. The increase is more pronounced among dispatchers who had 10 or more years on the job. So I think that once you hit that 10 years, you even begin to not see that impact anymore, and your family is seeing it. Back to Liz's point where she said, I was leaving work at work, and it wasn't until her daughter said, no, you weren't, that she didn't realize that she wasn't. Our results also show a strong association between withdrawal from social activities and length of time on the job. How many of us say this all the time? I hate people. All the time. And what happened was, the more calls, the more time I was spending outside of the call center, outside of my 911 center, the worse I felt. I didn't want to be around people. I didn't want to be around my family. I just wanted to be alone. I just wanted to be by myself.
And one thing that resonated with me a few days ago, there was a clinician who was giving our peer support team a little bit of training about change and how we adapt to change. And she said, whether you realize it or not, all of these changes are accumulating in your body, and they're, accumulating, and it's becoming this big stress ball, and it's going to blow at some point. And it just makes me think of my daughter, who would say to me, "You blow up over the smallest things." And I, of course, was on the defense, like, whatever, like, I don't know what you're talking about, but now it all makes sense. Yeah, her probably not doing her laundry didn't deserve a big blowout, but it was probably all the stress I had accumulated over time, and it finally, exploded. So what we're trying to do now, especially after the family impact study, is really talk to dispatchers about it and say, hey, we're not sure what the solution is right now. We're working on it, but we really want you to recognize that this could happen and try to recognize how it could affect your family, because it affected my family, and it was really eye-opening to me. And I started to make changes and just try to talk to them more about what was happening at work, and any stressors that I was experiencing. And they were, understanding, and it was nice to open up to them. Whereas all those years prior to that, I kept it all inside. I didn't want to share any of that with them. I was proud that I was able to keep it at work, but as we know now, that just wasn't the case.
And along with just the isolation and everything else, like, now you have distrust, you have disconnect, you have isolation, avoidance, withdrawal, loneliness. So all these things that are now social, like, they're impacting your social life. So work is also impacting your family life, and it is impacting your social life. More of our findings, which I love sharing anytime that you give me a soapbox, I'm going to go on it. Moodiness, irritability, or anger tended to increase more for dispatchers who had worked 5 or plus years. So at the 5-year mark, families start seeing the changes in mood, the changes in irritability, and more anger. One interesting thing that we found that I honestly was not ready to see was that lack of energy was the main family perceived change for those who had worked 1 to 5 years only. So starting at year 1, lack of energy is already beginning. So if we think about, what we talked about earlier with the shift work, missing, important dates, and, not being there for your family, not having those social interactions the way you want them to be, now you put on top of that, all these other commitments that we have in our social lives, and we put it back to, I don't have energy for this, I can't deal with this today. And we start to completely isolate ourselves. Finally, family perceived dispatchers who had been on the job for less than 1 year to be feeling overwhelmed. And I think that goes to show, especially for Liz and I, who work very, very closely with our new hires, is that we do have a tendency to do an information dump into our trainees. And I think it's important for us to understand that first year, the first year that people are working in this job, might be the make or break year for them. Might be the year that they decide that this is going to be their career, that they're going to stick this out. But it might also be the time when they say, I'm not cut out for this. So understanding that there is a lot for them to take in during that first year, and that it will overwhelm them, and that their families are going to notice this, right? Families noticed that dispatchers were bringing work home in the form of stress, 1 to 2 times a week, right? So if not every day, a lot of people were saying that mostly every day they're bringing something home, but the big stress, the big blowouts were happening 1 to 2 times a week. That's a lot. That's a lot for you to be fighting with your family once or twice a week. That's 52 times a year if you're doing it once a week.
And also keep in mind that all this stuff that's happening at home now is affecting your attitude when you come into work. You know what I mean? So I had an argument with my kid at home, and now I'm going to work and I'm hearing somebody else having an argument on the phone, and I have to deal with that. So it starts to diminish that positive attitude when you first started, in your job, in your career. So it becomes difficult to try to overcome that. And not only that, we work in a room with, 8 people at a time. And now you're affecting the other person's behavior. I've gotten messages as a supervisor from dispatchers who have said, can you do anything about this person whining? I can't stand the whining anymore. And yeah, I have to go over and say something to that dispatcher like, hey, I get it. This is tough. It's another change. I understand, but let's try to get through the shift, keep it positive and things like that, and just try to change the subject and keep it moving because it affects everybody around you. So it's important, I think, that we recognize when someone is behaving that way and just try to talk to them. And maybe they're going through a tough time and maybe they need to have someone to talk to outside of, what's going on at work.
So Liz and I prepared some hard truths to share with you guys. And I think that once you accept these truths, it does help keep that flame a little bit better and, helps us come into work with a better attitude and leave work with a little bit of a better attitude than we came in. All change, regardless if it's good change or bad change or irrelevant change, all change will increase and will create stress in your life. Whether it's work change or life change or social change, a move, a new house, a new car will create some kind of stress. So accept that, think of that, and ponder on the stress that it's creating for you, right? I think Liz and I, as Liz was saying, we were talking about the presentation we saw during our peer support meeting this week, and she was talking about how irate she was because somebody changed her schedule. And it was a minor change. It was like from 2:30 to 10:30, they were now going to work 3 to 11. Minor change, and it created so much stress. And it was really the straw maybe that broke the camel's back, but it was a minor change that everybody was overthinking.
I think also one of the things is about maybe a few months ago, I had some definitely powerful impacts to like my regular routine, and I didn't realize that I was bringing it home. And it was something that, if you're the type of person that likes structure and likes consistency, I think whenever there's any type of big change, it impacts you even more. So, where I might have gotten some bad news over something, I would come home and not want to talk to anyone, not want to do anything, and definitely going through like that mourning stage. And I think that part of obviously that's normal, but one of the things that I can do now, especially after we did our family impact study, is I can recognize it now and try to do a better job at just putting the brakes on it. I think at some point at the beginning of the week, I knew it was going to be, there were some challenges, and I said to my husband, I might be a little bitchy and moody this week, just to let you know. So trying to get ahead of it, I think, is also important.
And again, continuing with our change conversation, the one constant in life is change. There's always going to be change, especially in our world. 911 is evolving every day. Our careers, our jobs are evolving every day. Health, and when I think of health, I want to think of it as a state of complete harmony between my body, my mind, and my spirit. And when I say spirit, I don't mean, in a religious sense, but really like knowing that I'm at peace when I leave work and that I'm at peace when I come to work.
One of the things that someone pointed out was that, they avoid get-togethers with people. It just reminded me of when I first started as a 911 dispatcher, and people would ask, hey, what do you do for a living? And I would say 911 dispatcher. Everybody gets this, oh, what's the worst call you ever took, or what's the most interesting call? And I used to think that was a cool question, because I was like, they think what I do is kind of cool, that they want to hear more about it. Now, when I get that question, it's so annoying. I can't even think of what's the most interesting call, or what's the best call or worst call, because to me it's kind of like nothing stands out, or nothing that I want to remember stands out. So your attitude about that definitely changes from when you first started on the job.
And I think just kind of going back to the session before ours, and Jeremy's and Melissa's session yesterday, remember your why. Remember why you took this job. Remember why you do what you do. Remember why you chose to have children. Remember why you chose to get married, and why you chose your circle of friends. You are not your situation, right? You are a person. The situation is just what's happening to you. And as Jeremy just put on his comment there, do not settle. Do not settle. Remember why you're in this type of job. Remember why you're doing what you're doing.
And I mean, I hate to talk about a study when I can't quote it very well, but I was watching some morning show, and they were saying how the added stress in your life takes time off of your life. So, I mean, is that really what we want? Do we want to continue to live with a day full of stress, a life full of stress, and be unhealthy? Or do we want to have control over that as much as we can and try to live the healthiest life that we can? So yeah, Jeremy says if you're in a toxic environment, and I know a lot of people feel that they have no choice, maybe because of the money that they make or whatever the case may be, but you do have control over that. If you're in a toxic environment where it's affecting you, it's affecting your family, it might be time to move on and think about, what are the other options that are better suited for you.
And it's very, very important to find your tribe. I talked about this in in one of the roundtables that we did with Ricardo, is really like finding people who speak and understand your language, but that also know how to separate work from your social encounters. I do have people who speak my language who do understand the craziness that I go to and that I go through when I'm at work. But they also know how to pick me up when I am not talking about work. They also understand that when we are hanging out in a social setting, we're not going to talk about work. We're going to talk about other things. So find the people who speak and understand your language, meaning find the people that are going to understand what you're going through, but that are also going to help pull you out of there and help to ignite that flame inside of you.
And, even if your loved ones are not part of that tribe who might understand, I think, we pointed out before, it's important to talk to them about it. I think I shared the story with Anne about what happened to me on Mother's Day. And it just kind of reminds me of this. It was a Sunday, I had the day off. I had plans to have a barbecue with my daughter and my daughters and my mother-in-law, and there was a page out for the peer support team. And it was pretty far away, and I was looking at my phone and I said, I can't make that. And my husband just says to me, oh, why? What's going on? And I said, the peer support just got paged, and it's Mother's Day. It's going to be tough to get somebody out there. And he said, well, what's the point of the team if you're going to not go because it's Mother's Day? And he really took me, I was floored because I'm like, it's Mother's Day. I have plans. I'm not going anywhere. And it was like he was in another mindset, like he was talking about somebody else and not about me, because he kept on insisting that's what the point is. But it is the point of the team to be activated and get ready to go. But remember, you have to take care of yourself. And I actually had to break down crying. I said, I've given up so much because of my schedule, because of my job. I have something planned today with my children, with you, with my mother-in-law, and I'm looking forward to it. I'm going to not respond to this and take part in Mother's Day with my family because I've missed so many other ones. And until he saw me break down, he didn't realize how much not being part of those holidays, not being part of those regular routines had affected me over 18 years. And he said, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I didn't even realize how much it had impacted you. And I don't know what I was talking about. I don't want you to go anywhere. And so I just think it's important to communicate these things with your family and just let them know how it does impact you, that you're not there for Halloween, that you're not there for, that playoff game, and you wish you could be there.
And finally, I think this is the hardest truth of all, is to know when it's time to move on. And not only when it's time to move on from the job that you're in, or the getting another job or going to another agency, but also knowing when it's time to move on from feeling sorry for yourself, from the pity parties and the toxic, the negative and the toxicity that you bring upon yourself. Know when it's time to quit. Know when it's time to, hey, kick myself in the butt again and let's go. Let's start this up again. Let's do something for ourselves that we think is worth it. And that's what we have for you guys. I'm sorry we ran a little bit over, but if anybody needs anything or would like to, reach out to Liz and I, that's our emails. Those are our emails right there. And again, as Jeremy is posting right there, hashtag don't settle. And hashtag don't forget about yourselves. Take care of yourselves.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. That was excellent. And you were good. You didn't go over. Actually, you've got 5 minutes still.
Oh.
Yeah, it was from 1:15 to 2:15. So you were good. It was excellent. Some of the stuff here, it really hits home, and I was actually taking screenshots as you were getting towards these hard truths, right? They're ones that, as you were going over them, I was sitting there, I was like, like you're right. These are ones that are ones that we have to think of, especially that last one. Know when it's time to move on. That was one of the things that I kind of struggled with when I was in dispatch, and it was towards the end. It was when I had started the podcast and I was doing a bunch of other things, and what I was trying to do at the time was because I love technology, and what I was trying to do was streamline a lot of stuff that we were doing there with the the silent observer form. I turned it into something electronic because I wanted to streamline it so that we weren't just writing and writing while we're on the phone. In case other calls come in, we can actually type it out and then send it to whatever department. So I thought, maybe I can maybe set myself up to be kind of like a tech admin, a liaison between dispatch as well as our IT department. And, things just just didn't work out. And I thought, well, I know I can do more for public safety as a whole by doing what it is that I'm doing. But the way it ended up happening, they plucked me out of dispatch. They found me through the podcast and stuff, but it was a hard decision. It took a few weeks for me to make that decision to leave, and I do miss it. But I know that I ended up being able to do more. But it was hard, knowing when it's time to move on, and that one right there especially hit home. So thank you for sharing all of this and all the information that everybody was talking about. I mean, you hit home for a lot of people in here, and I'm just scrolling through the comments, and there's so many comments, but good comments here, and people talking, going back and forth, and networking and sharing with each other, just little snippets here and there of their own stories in comparison to the both of you and how you're talking about this. One of the things I saw up there as well was missing out on a lot of family get-togethers. And, I went through that as well, where, the family was always inviting us, places, but I kept having to tell them no because I was working way too much. And eventually we weren't getting these invites. And I was like, what happened? Like, why didn't you guys invite us? They're like, well, we figured you were working. I was like, damn. Okay. Well, I probably was, but, and Liz, to your point as well, I was listening to you. It was kind of similar where, a lot of people say that they leave it at work, right? But silence, that's a lot, right? When you go home and you're either silent or there's that irritability, everything that you were saying. I went through the same thing because I thought I was doing very well. I thought, you know what? I'm actually doing all right. It's not really affecting me, but I was kind of being jerky at home, and I didn't realize it. I thought I was leaving it at work, but it was all BS because just the silence alone was massive. And
when you exploded, it was overwhelming. So, yeah.
Right. Yeah. And that stuff comes out, and then you think, I didn't think that was going to happen.
Yeah, maybe I'm not doing as well as I thought I was. I think I had that thought so many times of like, oh, maybe I'm not doing as well as I thought, or oh, maybe my medication's not working as much as I thought it was. But it has nothing to do with that. It has more to do with me and my internal feelings, and me being in my feelings, and me being, overthinking things and bringing things home or taking them with me or bringing things to work. We all have a lot going on. And I think, our last hard truth there, knowing when to move on, it's not even just knowing when to move on from that agency, but it's more like knowing when to move on from those feelings and from being in your feelings.
Right. No, you are spot on. One of the other ones here that I ended up getting an image of was all change, whether positive or negative, will create stress. And I thought, right there, the nail. that is another one right there. The both of you brought so much to this session, and I can't thank you enough for it. And I feel like we need to do like a roundtable on this as well with the both of you, because this is very powerful. This is stuff that people need to really to hear and kind of talk it out, the same way that we're doing here with everyone in the audience. So again, thank you both so very much for see, Roxy is down for it. She says yes. So
there's another panelist.
Yeah. Oh, there you go, Roxy. Let's see, I'm sure she'll be all about it as well. But this has been excellent. Thank you both very much for coming on and sharing this message and going through. There you go, right there. Count me in. She's in. I'll get a hold of you guys. We'll have to figure this out. This will be good.
Thank you, Ricardo, for being the person that lets us put out the message. So, I appreciate that.
Of course. Thank you.
Thank you.
And let's see. Oh, Jameson throwing out some free resources as well. So nina.org/continuum. Make sure to check that out as well. And then also, everybody can connect even further if you click on that Dare to Be Great Discord community down there. And just remember to go to the rules channel when you get logged in there, and just click on the green check mark. all of the other channels will appear, and just look for the Dare to Be Great channel that is there, and you can connect. What Jeremy's saying, Dare to Be Great for? Oh, that's funny. We'll see what happens. But for the next session that's going to be coming up, the next session is going to be at 2:30 p.m. Eastern time, and it's going to be with Sarah Saunders, and she is out of Grays Harbor, E901 out of Washington, and the session is called Don't Beat a Dead Raccoon. No, really, don't. We got this one coming up, and you are going to dig it. So we will see you in the next one, and Jeremy, never say never. Man, dude. We'll see you in the next session. See you in a moment.